Shawn Gerou is the founder of Fanalyticsports, a company focused on increasing fan engagement by providing business intelligence solutions and socializing the data-driven approach to winning. He holds more than 8 years of experience in business intelligence and analytics, working in a variety of sectors with top consulting firms. He specializes in designing, developing, and democratizing analytics across disciplines. Thank you for being here.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks for Steve's Point putting it on. I'm excited to talk to you guys, and I think this is a great environment to learn analytics. I am the founder and CEO of Fanalyticsports. We've been around for about 2 years. Myself and a fellow from Chicago, Rick, are the founders, and we'll kind of talk through what they are. But I'm here to talk to you about a customer 360 view and how that's applied to the business world. It's important for a couple of reasons. One, as you think through business strategy, but two, for the analytic people in here too. It's really important to get that data structure and have good data to really build analytics. And so that's really two important pieces that we'll talk about today and kind of drive you home, hopefully, in the presentation. So a little bit about us. If you don't know who or what Fanalyticsports is, we were founded in 2016 and really founded out of kind of a sports consulting. We really wanted to get into the predictive analytics side. My background is I lead Kohl's on the customer analytics at Kohl's department stores. And 2 years ago, I had this kind of dream of could my analytic background translate into the sports world? And I was not sure that it really could. And so I applied for 2 jobs for 2 NBA teams, and then 2 after that, and I got 2 job offers. And at that time, I just could not leave. I'm from the area of Milwaukee right now. I just couldn't leave for family reasons. But it was something that said, hey, I can do some of these things to lead some of the analytic teams. I may have some background to do it. And we saw a niche as I continued to meet with other sports teams, some of the local teams around here, the Brewers, to really see that there is a niche for some of the skills that analytics has and really driving the business and really focusing through in there. And so 2016, at the end of December, we signed our first contract statement of work, which was a big win for us. It was a ticketing company out of Georgia, and so we did analytics for them. And I'll go through one of the examples a little bit with you here. And then we're on the mend for 2 more contracts in August. Some of the good partners that I've met throughout the years, to be fair, it's about networking and sitting at events like these and talking through, who have driven me to this. So in August, we're sitting down to sign 2 contracts with 2 professional sports teams, which is a huge win in our hat to really go through. So we're thrilled and excited to be here and talk analytics. I think it's an open forum to ask questions as you kind of go. You know, currently I work at Kohl's. We worked on a number of analytics, leading some of the personalizations if you've shopped there, to doing everything from the customer journey and things all the way on through. So it's been an exciting time frame in there and a great learning experience for me. For the company, Fanalytics, we did actually a big launch during the Final Four. So we had a big blog spot on the analytics road to the Final Four, and we were able to compete in, for those of you that know the data visualization side of things, really we worked in Tableau and we were part of the Viz Wars 2017. We didn't win, but it was a great experience nonetheless to get up in that environment and kind of see how that works. It was a cool thing. You can check it out on our blog or you can follow us on Twitter. It really combined data science from R, Python, to the cloud, to then a visualization. And that's kind of what we try to do, is really provide business solutions as best as possible, whether that's analytics, whether that's 360, whether that's segmentation or data visualization. That's really what we try to do, and we've found that there's a good niche for that. Lastly, this goes back to my days of when I got interested in it. I did my dissertation piece on Major League Baseball and attendance demand in interleague play. About the time CLU in interleague play started, they thought it was a big driver for attendance. And I was, before data science and predictive analytics, I was in econometrics, which existed, and that's what I did my dissertation on. It was a great learning experience to go there. We worked with the Brewers to do some work for them, which was really, really cool. So that's a little bit about Fanalytics. Let's kind of dive into here, hopefully a little bit on the 360 view, and kind of give you a little background of what you're going to see today. So I think the starting point, which is really quick and basic, is what's the current landscape of data and analytics today? It really sets the meat and potatoes for what is the 360 view, why it's needed, and what it can do, and what's the power of it. And then really what is the 360 view, and then some examples and use cases that hopefully you'll find helpful to go through your different areas. Again, it can be used on the business side as well as in the analytics landscape. So Twitter became my new best friend. I was not a social media nut, but I will say since launching a company and starting up, it has been hugely helpful with communicating, get a hold of people, and trying things. And so you can check out some of the code on GitHub with us, but we did a quick search and made this little word cloud about what are the key things in here. And it's a growing environment. I'm hoping you heard a lot of this today about machine learning, analytics, business intelligence, big data, predictive analytics, AI, augmented reality. It's a whole new world out there, and to be fair, even working in some of the companies that I've worked with, I've noticed some gaps everywhere, and it's an exciting time to see that and try and fill those and learn as you go on. I don't know that anybody's got this great secret sauce. If do, I'd love to meet with you and talk and pick your brain as well, but it's an exciting environment to do that. I was actually going to do a real-time tweet-a-thon and give away some free gear, but that'll be next year when we'll do the free swag, I guess, in here. This is the IBM stats. So 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created per day, and I think this was about maybe 2 years ago, so this is even older. But that is a tremendous amount of data that is created. It's one with about 18 zeros. In realistic terms, I think it's like 14 billion 64 gig cell phones. The number of tweets nowadays is something like it'd take you 20 years to read 1 day of tweets. And so whether it's photos, whether it's video, there's tons of data out there, and that's really the importance of the Customer 360, is trying to connect those dots, whether it's a player, whether it's a customer, a fan, etc., to connect those dots, and that's some of the experiences we've tried to do and portray here. That's kind of what it's getting at the bottom. A lot of it's unstructured. So how do you put that together into something that's meaningful is really what's important. I can tell you, working for some of my experience, the show-through environment is one of those things that we struggle with sometimes, and how to make it meaningful. We can do sentiment scores, we can do all these things, but how can I use it? And that's really what the Customer 360 will aim to do and try to do a little bit today. What is the 360 view? So I'm sure you've seen a bunch of 360 views before in your life. This is one with some data points. I think this thing can explode, and we'll talk about them, but generally most systems kind of have their CRM, which is their customer relationship, its name, address, sometimes phone number, and things like that. From another area, from the business side, a lot of times it's campaign stuff. So how did you respond via email and direct mail? We can track all that stuff, and hopefully what we're trying to do is always connect to this guy who's smiling and hopefully make him have a great experience and enjoy what's going on. Demographics, you can search online, you can scrape, you can go to vendors, you can have internal, maybe you capture age internally through your company or through your university. Ticketing, so you come in the gates, you scan, do you own season tickets? I will say one of the things, and this is where the niche of us came from 2 years ago, was what we saw was a lot of this was connected, and the ticketing was way the heck over here. And so you check in the door, but we know that there's your name, but we knew nothing else about you. And that is where biggest surprise to me was a meeting with all these other people on how can you really connect the dots. And I'll go through a little bit of tidbits on how to do that and how we've done it in the past. Transactions. So this is, your concession stand stuff, sometimes your online data, are you buying a jersey, are you buying other things like that? Again, how can you connect that information to that? Again, another big thing here was how do you connect these things? With technology, there's a lot going on. I'll use the example of the Detroit Pistons. They're doing real-time concession lines, waiting time, so you know on your app. How big is the line? How big is the bathroom line? And pushing that to you in real time and connecting to who you are via that app. So it's all about trying to connect that information and figuring out what's going on. Predictive and descriptive. This is a big field too. This is really a very interesting one. Predictive analytics, whether it's a lifetime value or propensity to do something. All these different things that are out there and algorithms are hugely important to doing that. And now what you can do, hopefully, is connect the dots when you come in, and how do we connect the dots to what you might do next and what you might see. And also, how do you mitigate yourself from being wrong in this? I don't know how familiar you are, but there's been some famous examples, especially in the retail world, of Target and how they try to do certain things of connecting the dots and kind of doing it appropriately. Clickstream. So, and what device do you come from? I mean, all your devices are hopefully connected. This is a tough thing to deal with and a tough thing to do, but as you're online today, does it connect to your iPhone, to your iPad, to your laptop? Does it know who the same person is? Does it know it's my wife on there searching for something? How do you really connect those dots and get those to go? And then lastly, the social sphere of Twitter and all those different areas of how do you kind of connect the Twitter universe. One thing, this isn't an exclusive list. I think there's a huge thing in here. Video analytics is something that I think is very important in photo analytics, which is really seeing our eyes. sports view, and the use of kind of athletes and cameras and thinking how that can work to collect data to make it manageable, to connect all the dots to really see it is really a huge rise. I mean, there's people training with cameras and seeing all these things, and being able to collect that and take information from that is really important in connecting all these different dots and pictures. So there's a huge opportunity and area to kind of go through and go forward. A couple things to remember. One thing in how to do this and how to get there. Connecting the dots helps lead business decisions, but it also helps analytics. I can't say it enough. Working in very different environments, being able to really understand the data and go through it and make sure it's doing what it's doing is important to not only the analytics and making the business decisions. The second thing off of that I also think is being able to explain it. Sometimes in the analytic world we become very intense and driven in there, but I always tend to take a step back and say, how the heck can I explain this thing in a nomenclature, normal manner, so that people understand it in those areas. This is probably the most important thing to kind of thinking through this 360 view, is related back to an entity and an identity. And what that means is whether that's a person, a fan, think of how they are developed as an entity and what really creates them, especially from the data standpoint and the data area. Similar, I would relate it to a player. What really creates them and what really makes them. If you want to create and connect all the dots from a video to the player stats to everything else, how do you do that? What is the raw entity, the sheerest entity that you can see, and how can you do that and really connect those dots? So it's taking a step back a little bit and really identifying that. So an example of a player would be name, maybe number really identifies them. What other key identifiers will identify them in the system? If you think about a fan in different areas, it is a variety of different things, from a name, an address, an email, a cookie ID, you name it, that can really get you that distinct identity. And then what you want to do is figure out how can you really start to combine these things to make sense. And one of the easiest ways for us is, I think you can become very overwhelmed in the data environment with all that stuff and really start to tackle bigger projects and see it. But the bottom line is, to us especially on this side, is starting small with key initiatives in line. So what can you do as big wins to really help from a business side or an analytical side that will really help drive you to the future and really drive IRI. And so we'll talk about one example here a little bit, and if we have time, maybe we'll try another one to kind of go through in there. And then I always think this one is key too, is think outside the box. Sometimes I have my own development time with my team and others on really developing analytics and coming through with things. We'll share a little bit with you on what we call kind of the SOW, the share of wallet calculation. I'm not saying it's good or right, but it's something that's been hard to come by and hard to see. It's something that we brainstorm and put together to kind of work, and we've been testing through it to do it. So just reading up, coming here is very important. I think Twitter and all those universes are hugely important to really finding what people are doing and understanding it. And don't be afraid to take a chance. I'll tell you, this example of lifetime value, about 8 years ago when I started out, lifetime value was this thing that everybody loved and the buzzword of the day. And, I was sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, we should use this, but what the heck is it? How do you actually use it and create it? I mean, that's the hard part of it. And so I sat there and I changed jobs and my team brought me over, and there's the same thing. We need to use lifetime value. Okay, you're the second company I'll mention now that says that. What do you guys want to do and how do we build it? I built it, really it stood there and it kind of just sat there. And then about a year later, a CMO came down to me and was like, man, do we have lifetime value? My boss came to me, he goes, you think we could dust that off in about a day? And I was like, I don't know. But think outside the box, always keep learning and churning, and have beliefs in your things, whether they're right or wrong, but keep believing in them. Lifetime value will be a huge example. And it's also a big example of how it translates to. So one of the things is when I interviewed for some of the sports teams was, hey, you can do this, we could use this for sponsorship, having the best value of our sponsorships to come in the future. And that really drove home a lot of the value that I could provide to people, was being able to use those things. And lastly, I think you've heard this a few of the seminars that I've been to today and seen, is this build, refine, and test. I mean, it's a lot of work sometimes, but you're building, you're refining, you're testing to kind of really connect those dots and see if they work. And if you have a strong initiative at the beginning that you want to focus in on, and it probably has the best buy-in, then you're going to start there and start to go around the circle as best as possible to kind of build that 360 view as best as you can. So the next kind of part is kind of use cases and examples, and hopefully we'll go through some of them. Sorry I had to make this a little infographic. I had some pictures up here and some other things, but in going through some of the vendors I had, they weren't allowing me to totally use everything I wanted to. But here's a really good example. It's kind of cheesy, it's kind of easy, it's probably an example people have seen, but by connecting the dots in an in-game ticket exchange, we increased revenue about $1.3 million to basically a team in one season. And here's how we kind of did it. It's pretty easy, it's nothing out of this world. Joe and his two sons check into the baseball game. Little scanner, scans it. We have an idea it's Joe. Now Joe could have sold his tickets, right? So we may not be 100% it's Joe, but we know that somebody, Joe, had bought those tickets at this time. So we'll do some checks to kind of see if that's right or not. What we do is we connect it into our internal CRM, and we understand that the person who bought these tickets, 3 tickets, is sitting in section 426, row 12, married with 2 kids, and has a birthday coming up next month. So that's good. We get here at the end of the 4th inning, it's nothing, it's a tight game, and we begin to start to see that of our ticket data, we can start to see all these different dots where people have not checked in, whether it's corporate sponsorship, whether it's people who aren't at the game, or I've been to numerous Brewers games, though they kick you out of the lot, people who had a little too much to drink and did not make it into the stadium. And so there's open seats in that area. And so what this company sought to do was make use of those open seats. Now what they do is they have disclaimers on there, and there is a backup plan in case those people do check in. But what we sought to do was really make use of those open seats. So now what happens? Joe gets a little push message to his phone. We also know it's Joe because he's got that unique ID on his phone. So we could be wrong, and Joe may be at home wondering who the heck we're talking to because he's not at the game. But what we do is we notice that we're decently right, especially if we start to segment, and we'll get into how this is done. But as you break down segments, example maybe season ticket holders and others, you become to learn the data a little bit better. You're still not always going to be right, but in fairness, I think that is really the nature of predictive analytics in general and how you're trying to do it, and the customer 360 model. But what we do is we send him a seat. Joe looks at it. We do a little bit of kind of share a little algorithm. There's a lot of different things you could do. There's some price optimization. But we do a quick estimate to see how much more extra money can we get out of Joe possibly using a share of wallet estimator. And then what we'll do is we'll set the prices based on that and say, should we offer it depending on where the seats are, because there are different price seats and tier levels, what dollar amount should we kind of threshold? And then what we'll do is we'll eventually test that out to say, did $20 offer work better for some of the segments that we have? Maybe they're higher spend people, maybe they're lower spend. How did that test out and how did that see? And we begin to refine the algorithm and refine it that way. Meanwhile, back home, Joe's wife logs into her computer and she receives a nice little birthday reminder that her husband has a birthday coming up, and here's a quick offer for 4 tickets upcoming game. It'd be nice if she bought them and kind of go in that way. But this is one example of we use the ticket data, we're able to connect to the CRM data, we're able to connect to a device and really see that, we're able to connect to the analytics and the algorithm side to hopefully drive that. And then what we're able to do is then drive home kind of not the clickstream, but the device type of his wife and the household data back again to kind of that demographic or that CRM internal data. I will say it's a lot of dots to create and to test out. We've been on the wrong end of certain things. I can use a good example of where we've put in the customer. I don't know if it was our fault, whose fault it was, but it was a number instead of a name. And so we've learned a lot about how to troubleshoot that by using generic statements off the initial get-go and different things like that, so you don't have to get specific into that nature. And so that's very, very key and very important. And this is our initial estimate, estimating this kind of option. This was something I just added on. We've actually tested this in a different life, kind of talking about testing that and using that, and it's shown to work. So there's some good things here from a side that you can use and kind of hopefully implement as you go forward. So what the heck is a Gameday Wallet or share of wallet? So it gets a little bit, I try not to get very good in math, but what exactly do we mean? If you go to a person, they basically have total spending for a day. You come to me, I have a total spending amount for the day, generally speaking. I then also have, if I go to a baseball game, maybe an amount that I can spend at the game. Now one of the things, and we'll add to our own faults here, is There's a thing called disposable income in the kind of the economics world, and being able to proxy for that or price elasticity is something we've worked on in general. They're difficult too. They're very difficult to estimate, and too, there are things that we're testing in that nature too as well. But we do talk about some of the unknown observed things that are kind of the way they are. What we have is we have your total spend, your game day spend, and then what you actually spend. And it's a pretty quick equation. One's less than the other or equal to the other depending on how much you spend. This realistic, attainable, what we do in order to estimate is say some of our best customers will generally spend, maybe it's not all of their wallet, but maybe it's a good portion of their wallet with us. And we estimate that out based on all the data and information that we have. The one thing about wallet, and these are other ways that you can estimate, and we'll talk through kind of the one that we may have used, is survey. So you could survey your customers, and they could give you your wallet, or basically I spend 90% of my wallet. You know how much they spent at the game and ballpark, and you can build models off of that. We've done that. You run into some sampling biases, some response biases, and also, to be fair, sometimes sampling a room, sometimes it's hard to get a high enough number or sample size to make it kind of meaningful. But it's a great option down there, but it's also expensive too, and so we did not go that route. A clustering approach to kind of see who are your best friends across them ticket segments, and then really apply that up to say, out of the best fans, what is significant about them that we can apply to everybody else. This assumes kind of the segments that your best fans spend the majority of the wallet. But what we wanted to do here is really split it by different segments. We're big on segmentation and using it because we would say that somebody who's in a different price tier may have a different wallet where they're sitting. We would say that somebody on a different game day we've seen has different spendabilities in different areas in there. So being able to segment who they are, that's one of the reasons teams have dynamic pricing on different days. Whether it's the Cubs, Brewers, or whatever day, it becomes a little bit more expensive. So being able to model for that helps us out. And then quantile regression. So basically quantile regression will try and split it into whatever percentiles you'd like. You could use the top 90th percentile to kind of get your best customers possibly, and build a model that way. I mean, much like any other models, you run into biases and overfitting, depending on what you want to choose and who you're talking to for that day. We chose to kind of go the route of kind of the middle there a little bit to help us kind of get that wallet. So this isn't anything secret or elaborate. You'll see the slides out. They're also, I did on the GitHub page. I'm doing kind of running into where I have a private GitHub page for the company and now a public GitHub page to kind of help showcase some stuff. So you'll be able to find the slides and stuff on there if need be. But what we did is we just did a simple k-means algorithm to cluster these customers together. For those of you that are familiar or not, basically what you want to do is it creates a calculation of Euclidean distances, and what it tries to do is really put these customers at the minimum value into different clusters of similar behavior using whatever variables you have at the time. And so you could put in 6, you could put in 8, and what you're able to do is you're able to determine what the optimal number would be, if it's 8 or 6, by using statistics to really tell you what should be the best optimal segmentation you should use. So it would tell you if you two should be segmented up here and here. And what you can do is then get into the descriptive data and really understand who those customers are. And what we tend to do is try and make some fancy names as best as possible. And then what you want to do is you want to evaluate clusters. Do they actually make sense? One of the biggest things that we've tried to do is really try to make sense out of it as best as possible. You know, do things make sense? Are they positive and negative? Are you able to kind of scale it up? Does the 6 clusters that you use, how is that sum of squares compared to 7 or 8? Which is the best one to help you use in that nature? And the second thing on this is what we tried to do, and this is a little bit of force fitting, so it's good and bad, is things like income. High income generally spend more, right? It's kind of the main correlation effect in there. So what we wanted to do is really get a good distribution in our segments that we used when we assumed the best customer. And I think it's just mainly because we were assuming the best customer that we wanted to almost force fit the good distribution of what we thought our customer base looked like and was best using in there. And so what we did is we then wrote the algorithm to really select that in the technical terms of macro, of automating this thing out so that it would run, split off into our 10 to 14 segments and produce the best customer and have good distribution of what we believed was good distribution. Once we have that, we then go to fitting a model now. We know this is the best customer. We know roughly how much you're going to spend with us on a given time and day. And what we did is we began to model those things, whether it was using the game segment of day, ticket segments of high, medium, low price tiers, day of week, I thought the down was the stock, prior spend, age squared, things like that nature. These are just examples of things that we've kind of thrown in to kind of see what is the best model to use. At the end of the day, we then have kind of our best estimate of what you would spend. We can come in to start to see where you're at on our threshold of wallet spend for the game. And what we can do is we can subtract out, see where you're at, and hopefully test out our offers to see how it's going to work in that time frame. So in a quick nutshell, that's kind of a good example of connecting the dots and using some type of analytics behind it. Here's some other examples. Lifetime value applied to sponsorships, I kind of touched on that a bit. That's a very big one, I will say. Everybody wants to know how big their sponsorships are and different things. What is it, DraftKings and all those guys now are big in the NBA. Like, how much can I get from them? How much will they be worth to us in the future? That's really what lifetime value is, and it's a huge thing if you can kind of help them out. This is the easiest way, in which I don't see enough people doing, is the abandoned cart thing. For people out there, it's the easiest one that we've seen and can get off. You know, I browse and I don't come back. It's fairly easy to connect those dots and bring it back to you and extend an offer via an email or something like that. I'm finally seeing everybody kind of get on board on this, which is really good to hopefully get to that 360 view. Concessions, personalized concessions, we talked a little bit about connecting the dots to you, making sure that, hey, you know, you have kids, cotton candies for sale, here it is, let's test the offer out. Journey mapping is a very big one. We're very big on customer experience around here. Are you a new customer? How do we get you on board to keep you in the system? You know, how do we make it such that it's a good customer experience? And I think, to be fair, I think to use Amazon as a good person, I think, on the customer experience side of being able to get you into that tier and think that you're the best customer in that nature, right? Even though they may not have the best price, I think they started out that way on the Prime. There's now a price gouging, right, in your Prime now for shipping. So it may not always be the best price, but the belief is that they offer the best customer experience sometimes. Dynamic ticketing and pricing, and then optimizing your channel via marketing. So those are some different examples. I'll go through some more possibly, but I want to open it up for questions and other items.
Yeah, Shawn, having worked with CRM systems and having it integrated to their existing CRM. Okay, so there's 100 different CRM systems out there. Is there one that you integrate better with, and then how much do you find you have to scrub the data?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I would say, to be fair, I think we integrate with most of them. I think it's about learning and getting in there and really getting dirty to see it. We integrate with a lot of the bigger players depending on what channel and what area you're working with. I will say I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to learn in my past, is that being a bigger company and allowing me to mess with all the different tools and the plethora of things, it's just been able to learn that. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% great on all of it, but there's enough knowledge to kind of outreach and see that to do that. And I think your biggest point is, you know, when you get into that data, sometimes you're there and now you're like, what the world did I just get into?
Yeah, it's garbage in, garbage out, and then sometimes there's too much.
Exactly. And so I think that's where I go back to the beginning of kind of saying, what's the main thing that we can do to quick win to get something out the door by connecting the dots? And let's focus on that and focus on getting that right. And then to be fair, it's about, you know, how do you get that? Because no matter what I say or anybody else says, if it's still garbage coming in, how do we fix that and change that? And to be fair, a lot of companies are going towards the cloud now, which makes it a little easier to do some things. From a consulting firm or outside firm to do that. It's just about agreeing and signing off to do some of those things. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
At what point in the customer experience do you capture the demographics? Like you had said an example like marital status and birthday and all that.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's a variety of different ways to do that. You can do it up front. That's one of the reasons people have loyalty programs predominantly now, is to capture as much information as you can. Sometimes it's not mandatory, sometimes it's not. You can do it by connecting the dots to Facebook. Sometimes we'll get some demographic data from there, though Facebook doesn't really love to share data that much. But you can also get it from third-party vendors. It's a cost factor in there, or there are areas that you can scrape and use similarities somewhat. Not to say that it's the best, but there are income by zip codes out there and different things to that that may help proxy. I've spent a lot of world in the free world of trying to figure out how to do things on the cheap. So there are ways, and you just got to kind of test to see which they are. But those are 3 or 4 options, I'd say. Yeah. And we've noticed even on some of the best vendors of demographics that they're not always right. I think I myself have a cat and a couple of dogs, and 2 kids, and I think that was incorrect. And so, I get it, it's a lot of, your mail and your subscription and everything else, but, you gotta kind of test, and then to the point of caution yourself. So for like the ticketing example there, we had ushers with tablets, so they knew who was coming down, who was coming in, and who checked in. So if they came into their seats, those ushers knew what was going on, and we were allowing those customers that were in those seats that had paid the money to go back, or we'd give them a better seat if we found something open, and when they go back, we'd give them an offer for another day's tickets. So we didn't get too much scuff for that, but it's a way to just kind of cover yourself in case something goes wrong, I guess. Yeah. Anything else?
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. Feel free to stop by.